Tom Brady sent a stern message to Lamar Jackson. We talk about that. Rashod Bateman making a bold Ravens prediction and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday. Plus, we have a bunch of other Ravens content that comes your way on a daily and weekly basis. We have the Locked On Ravens Squad Show live Mondays and Thursdays, usually 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, although Thursday's episode is going to turn into a Saturday episode for the last two games of the preseason. The Ravens take on the Cowboys tomorrow. That's with myself, Sam Njoku, and Kadri Ismail. We also go live after every single Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news. And we now have the Locked On Ravens watch-alongs. So you can watch along every single game with me, and we'll react play-by-play. We'll go through the ups and the downs of the games. I'm really excited. We did that last week. That was our first one. Of course, be sure to tune in tomorrow for the Cowboys one in week number 2. Thanks to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If it's somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Ravens are down in Dallas. They will play the Cowboys tomorrow, as I have said already multiple times throughout this show in the first 2 minutes of it. But week 2 of the preseason, we're getting closer and closer to regular season football. We have a lot to dive into. We'll dive into just general news and notes in the final part of the show, some preseason things to look for. Tavon Austin said some cool things about LeJohntay Wester, so we'll get into all that in the final part of the show. Second part of the show, Rashod Bateman, he went on First Things First, and he made a bold Ravens prediction. But in the first part of the show, Tom Brady sent a stern message to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, for that matter. But Lamar Jackson, obviously, this being a Ravens show, we're going to look at it from the Lamar Jackson side of what he said. So let's just dive right into it. Tom Brady, he weighed in on a bunch of different things, and this was on the Joel Klatt show. And there were a lot of conversations that Brady had, one of which was about the quarterback situation throughout the NFL right now. And he ended up talking about the fact that in the NFL, there are a lot of good quarterbacks, and he was asked about who he thinks will be the quarterback to win a Super Bowl next. And he said, quote, "So naturally, most people will say Lamar or Josh because they have been the closest. It's the championship games MVPs. They have the highest expectation. I mean, football is different. It's like every year you start right at the bottom with everyone else. And I do not love predictions and hypothesizing because it's up to them. It's not up to the words I say, or it's not up to even the words they say. It's what they do over the next 6 months with their teammates and coaches in order to put themselves in a position to be successful." And then he kind of went into a little more detail. The conversation expanded a little bit. And he said, quote, "I think from afar, I can only tell so much. If I were in there every day, I could see their habits. It's always that line about who wants to win versus who is winning, to do whatever it takes to win. Everyone wants to win, but what are the habits and the daily habits and the actionable things you need to do every day to put your team in a position to win? Patrick Mahomes is the one who does that the most often." And so obviously there is a standard with Patrick Mahomes, right? That is the standard throughout the league. Mahomes is a multi-time Super Bowl winner. He has the rings. He has that to back up. Like he has that argument. It's who's going to be that next guy. And I think Tom Brady is correct in terms of you have to want it. It's not just about winning in the moment. It's about, are you going to take the extra steps to go above and beyond? And I truly think Lamar Jackson does do that. You know, he works hard in the offseason. He is the ultimate competitor. And we've continued to see Lamar evolve as a leader. And we've had the conversation about Lamar as a leader a ton here on this show. You know, I'm not going to go too much into detail about it, but he's not the guy that's going to be in the middle of the huddle like Roquan Smith or Ray Lewis. Like he's not that type of leader. But what we've heard from his teammates, like Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, Derrick Henry, like everyone you talk to about Lamar, it's, yeah, he's putting us in position to be better, not only with how he plays the game, but how he sees it. And so we hear and we see him after plays going up to his receivers and saying, hey, this is what we could do better on this play. Hey, what'd you see on this play? Zay Flowers has talked about Lamar jumping into meetings and kind of working with his guys that way and getting together after practice, organizing things in Florida. There are things that he has done over the course of his career to show you that, hey, he's not content with just winning regular season games, with winning a playoff game. Unfortunately, it's been that way for the Ravens, right? Where they'll win a playoff game, and then unfortunately in the big moment against the Buffalo or Kansas City, I guess Tennessee, back when Tennessee was still good, they ended up faltering in that moment. But I think Brady's big message here is like, hey, you want to win? Everyone wants to win. But what are you doing behind the scenes to make it happen? And so it wasn't Brady like calling out Lamar or anything like that, right? That is 100% not what was going on here. But it's kind of a message of like, hey, keep doing those things behind the scenes. And it's a stern, like, you need to keep doing those kinds of things, because if you don't do those kinds of things, it's not just going to fall into your lap, essentially. And Lamar Jackson knows that, by the way, right? Lamar is not just sitting there like, woe is me, we lost in the playoffs, so I'm just going to, be lackadaisical about everything. No, Lamar works very, very hard. But we know the respect Tom Brady has for Lamar Jackson, and we know the respect Lamar Jackson has for Tom Brady. It's mutual both ways. Both guys, Lamar looks up to Brady, and Brady has publicly stamped Lamar Jackson after his retirement is next. He literally said, "You're next," in an Instagram story a couple of years ago once he decided to hang it up. So I think it's good to put this message into perspective, right? Because I think that some people do just believe, hey, it's all going to fall into my lap. Lamar Jackson does not feel that way. He's talked about the motivation factor. He's talked about how he wants to take everything one game at a time, where he's not looking ahead to the Super Bowl. He understands it's a long season, right? Some people will just look ahead to the playoffs and be like, yeah, our team's really good, but regular season, we know we can win in that. That's not a big deal. No, Lamar Jackson, he has made it very clear, like, yeah, Super Bowl is the big goal here. That's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to win for himself, for his teammates, for the city, for everybody. But he said, man, we got to take it one game at a time, one day at a time. And I think that's the right mindset that you have to have if you're trying to achieve that goal, because you can't just look ahead to February in August. And that's not what Lamar is doing, which I think is a really, really important thing. And look, if there's someone that knows about winning, it is Tom Brady. Obviously, he had moments against the Ravens in the playoffs I still look back on to this day, and I shiver over, because he was one of those guys that the Ravens had to go up against, and Brady got the best of them multiple different times. Now, the Ravens obviously got the best of Brady in moments as well, but that's a guy that just was ring after ring after ring. And now that Mahomes has done that, the Ravens have been caught in a cycle where, with the lack of parity throughout the AFC, where it's just been, all right, the Patriots dominate and then the Chiefs dominate. Who's going to be that next team to take over once that Chiefs run is over? And, Mahomes isn't going anywhere, right? The Chiefs have a good young group. It's not as young as it once was, but if you're Lamar, the Ravens, Joe Flacco, they had to conquer Mount Brady. They had to climb that mountain and beat him to get to where they wanted to go. That was why their tour in 2012, when they beat Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady to get to the Super Bowl and beat the 49ers, was so rewarding, because they beat guys that had either handed them playoff losses in the past. Peyton Manning back with the Colts in 2006, and obviously Brady a couple of different times there. I guess it would have been a little sweeter if it had been the Steelers instead of the Colts, but even so, the Colts had history, right? So it was a storyline playoff run, which I think why last year would have been so perfect, by the way, if they had beaten the Steelers, the Bills, and then the Chiefs. They get to play the Eagles, and if they won that game, that would have been an all-time run. But in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. You have to put in the work to get there. And while Brady's correct, like, he's not there every day behind the scenes looking at every single thing that Lamar does or that Josh Allen does. If you want to be that guy to unseat Mahomes and unseat the Chiefs in the AFC, you have to be willing to put the work in. And I think that puts Lamar in a really good spot, because we see every day that he is clearly willing to do so. So it's a stern message from Brady, but it's a real one. It's a real one. And I think that him saying that, I'm not sure if Lamar saw it or not, or Josh Allen saw it or not, but those guys know. And Josh Allen's a hard worker too, right? Both those guys work hard. Both those guys understand that they want to win and the work they have to put into to make that goal a reality. But to me, I think Brady kind of putting it into words there gives it a little added meaning, which I think is important. But coming over the second part of the show, Rashod Bateman, he made a bold Ravens prediction. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Now, Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Now, I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I really wasn't even using. And so canceling those alone saved me money every month, which is an absolute game changer because I've been trying to save some money, and doing that with Monarch and figuring out those accounts and subscriptions I didn't even need helped me with that goal. So Monarch was a lifesaver there. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Friday edition of the show. Happy Purple Friday. The Ravens again face off against the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow. We'll get a little bit more into some of the things to watch for in that game in the final part of the show. And we should have a bonus episode tomorrow. Hopefully, we have a very special guest for tomorrow's bonus episode as well. It'll help us sort through some Lamar Jackson rankings. So hopefully that all comes through. But we will definitely have an episode, and we'll get a little bit more into that as well. And then, of course, be sure you pop in for the watch along during the game. You can watch with me and we can react to everything in real time. It was a really awesome first watch along we had last week for the Colts game. Really excited to do it again and continue to get into the groove of all of that. But I want to dive into what Rashod Bateman had to say over on First Things First. He talked with Chris Broussard, Nick Wright, Kevin Wildes, Greg Jennings as well. And it was a really cool conversation. A lot of good things were asked. But if you aren't familiar with Chris Broussard and his liking that he has towards the Ravens, whenever the Ravens win, he puts on his purple robe, he puts his feet up on the desk, he gets a sandwich, he gets a soda, some chips, and he rubs it all in Nick Wright's face, right? We all know that Nick Wright, yeah, it can be interesting with Nick Wright and the Ravens sometimes. In fact, probably more than sometimes, right? We talk about Nick Wright a lot on this show and some of his takes on Lamar Jackson, but Chris Broussard, he sticks up for the Ravens. He sticks up for Lamar. And so when Rashod came on the show, Chris wore the purple robe and he did the whole thing. And he talked about where this is what he likes to do when the Ravens win and supporting Baltimore and supporting the team. And he asked Rashod, he said, is this the year where I'll be able to do this in Nick Wright's face in the postseason? And Rashod Bateman said, yeah, I definitely think this is the year we all put it together. That's the only way we feel right now. Lamar's hungry. The whole team is hungry. All we got to do is connect and play big in those big time moments. We've got a shot per usual. And look, a lot of people, I think, feel that way within the city right now. I just think the big thing is that the roster is right in front of us all. We see the talent in all three phases. I know special teams with Tyler Loop and him being a rookie is it's a little dicey to think about sometimes, but just got to trust the process there, I guess. But offensively, defensively, you have the talent there. But, Rashod putting a stamp on it, saying he definitely thinks this is the year that they'll put it all together. And, that's the confidence you have to have if you're the Ravens right now, because they know how talented they are. But it's a couple things. One, I don't think they're letting it get to their head. Like, obviously not. They clearly are humble about the entire situation and are just like, hey, you know what? We need to do what we need to do. We need to play better in those big time moments consistently. And that's kind of what Rashod Bateman talked about as well, where Nick Wright asked him about the regular season mojo in the postseason. And he said, Rashod said, quote, at the end of the day, it's football. You've got to show up and play every day. I wouldn't say we perform better in the regular season. We've won playoff games. We've proven we can win. It's about sustaining that. Just got to come in, ears chopped back, do everything we can to win the game. So look, I think the consistency factor is real, where I think the perception of Baltimore, which just isn't true whatsoever, is that, they haven't won a playoff game or they've barely won any playoff games. And that's not true. I mean, yes, they haven't won in the moments they've needed to. They haven't won a Super Bowl That is all correct. But Lamar Jackson has 3 playoff wins under his belt, one against a good Tennessee team back in 2021, another against the Texans in 2023, and then one against the Steelers in 2024. I technically, I guess 2020. Yeah. The years are like 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2024, 2025. Whatever you want to classify it as, they have 3 playoff wins in the Lamar Jackson era. And they have honestly looked pretty dominant in a lot of those games. I mean, the Tennessee one was a little closer. That was Marcus Peters and his interception where they went to the logo and celebrated, which was one of the all-time moments, I think, still of the Lamar Jackson era. But that Houston game wasn't really close. That Pittsburgh game was not close at all. And I just think people only look at the losses, which again, in a ring culture championship era, you want to win a Super Bowl, that's what is going to be looked at. But Rashod is correct, and like they've been there and they've won. They know how to win playoff games. Like they've done it before, but it's about winning those playoff games consistently. And they've not rattled off 2 consecutive playoff wins. And you know what? Usually you need to win 4 consecutive unless you have a bye. So that to me is the next step for them, right? Don't get too cute with stuff, and that's coaching staff and players. Don't get in your own head. That is coaching staff and players. There are a lot of other things they need to do, but just winning a game and then going on a run. That's what the Ravens did in 2012, right? In the Ravens, even in 2000, like these teams were not favored and like, oh, they were the top seed in their conference. No, they were 2 4 seeds the years they won. And in that 2012 year in particular, the Ravens were horrible leading into that postseason. They limped into the playoffs. They, I think, were 1-3 in their last 4 games. They barely squeaked out the North. And then they just got hot at the right time. And sometimes that's literally all it takes. It is literally all it takes is you get hot at the right time. You don't have to be this great team when you get into the postseason. Obviously, it helps. I think it's good if you have some momentum heading into the postseason, but it's not the be all end all. Rashod making that declaration, though, I think does give you a little confidence in like, hey, these guys do believe it. Because I think some of the thing that people are worried about, at least what I've seen, is that, yeah, they do get in their head. And they're just going to get in their head again when the time comes. And Rashod being like, hey, no, we know we can do this. Like, this is the year I think it happens for us. That confidence, you need it. You do need that confidence. So shout out to Rashod and the rest of the team for having that. He also talked about Lamar a little bit. He said, quote, Lamar can do a lot of things, but obviously he does his job as a passer as well. Honestly, we've got so many weapons on the field. It doesn't matter who's got the ball in their hands. Somebody's going to be willing to make a play. We've got all the weapons. We got to put it together now. So he mentioned guys like Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry himself, obviously in that conversation as well. I mean, yeah, this offense is loaded. It is absolutely loaded. It is ridiculous how loaded this offense is. And it's probably the last year we're going to see it this loaded for a little while because I don't think they're going to be able to retain Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. DeAndre Hopkins also you can add into that conversation. A couple of other guys as well. They just have guys. I mean, it does become that problem of like last season, there were so many issues defenses had to face in terms of matching up with guys where it was very hard for defenses to figure out who they wanted to bring attention to because there were so many guys they had to take into account. There was, okay, well, if we send all this attention at Derrick Henry in the run game, we're going to leave really good route runners and Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman one-on-one. If we shade help over to the receivers and we play lighter in the box, well, Derrick Henry is just going to run us over. Like it's and then the whole Lamar factor as well. That's a whole different conversation. So they do have the weapons. It makes their offense super, super dangerous and super potent, in my opinion. And look, I'm personally really excited to see how the situation unfolds for them this year, how DeAndre Hopkins and Lamar are able to establish their chemistry. They've been working really hard at that. How Rashod can follow up a career year fresh off an extension. Like it's going to be an exciting year for the offense again. He also talked about John Harbaugh a little bit because the question was about John and Jim because apparently everybody thinks Jim, he gets all the crazy. So is John a little bit like that as well? And Rashod said, quote, Coach Harbs is pretty normal. He's like a dad around the facility. Doesn't yell much unless he makes you mad. He's the opposite of his brother for sure from what I've seen. So, and that's kind of the reputation it feels like John Harbaugh does have, right? Where he is the dad around the facility. There are all the conversations about Harbaugh. We've had them here on the show plenty of times about what this year means for him, especially if they aren't able to achieve their goal of winning a Super Bowl this season. But I give him a lot of credit for being able to transform his coaching style. It wasn't easy early in his career. And, if you asked a player who played for him that question early on in his career, like we've had Mark Clayton on the show, and Mark played for John over the first couple of years of Harbaugh's tenure. And Mark was floored about how Harbaugh has transformed from those early days. And it's in a good way. Like, being a player's coach, being that guy the players can go to. Players would go out on that field for John Harbaugh and play as hard as they possibly can. They do it because that's the guy that Harbaugh has transformed himself into. He is a player's coach as opposed to who he was early in his coaching career. So it's good to have coaches like that. But again, obviously, Ravens do have to get the job done here in the postseason. And if they don't, well, you might have to put Harbaugh's job under a little bit more of that microscope. He also talked about week one, Rashod Bateman. He said, quote, professional athletes, we got to treat it one game at a time. We've got a long season. We want our look back, but that would be anybody if you're a competitor. So, obviously for Rashod and the Ravens, there's going to be a lot of charged up emotion in that Buffalo game. I just know for people watching the game, right? People who are Ravens fans, cover the team. Like there's a lot of charged up emotion that goes into a game like that. There was a lot of that last season with Kansas City, right? I remember and there was that whole conversation about, oh, is it a huge game or not? What does it mean if they win, if they lose? They want to win that game. And I think that they have an opportunity to, but it is the regular season. It is one game at a time. It is just 1 week at a time. And the Bills are the first obstacle for the Ravens on their journey for 2025. He also talked about the defense, saying everybody's better right now, being able to go up against that DB group every day. Add Jaire into that mix. Malaki is going to be an amazing rookie. He's playing at a high level right now. He said everyone's flying around out there. So truly, is that iron sharpens iron. Clearly, the Ravens feel that way about the situation as well. So, look, I'm excited about the defense, about the offense, and the fact that they are able to go up against one another in practice each and every single day. But coming up with the final part of the show, we're getting into news and notes. Again, some notes for the Cowboys game tomorrow. We'll also dive into what Tavon Austin had to say about LeJohntay Wester, and the Ravens no longer have joint practices anymore. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On Ravens are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And one of my favorite features, the new Guillotine Leagues, they just dropped, and every week the lowest-scoring team is eliminated, and the last one standing wins. Whether you're all in on something new where you like sticking to head-to-head leagues or jumping into public leagues, Yahoo's got you covered. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. The season around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still diving into Ravens talk with you on this Friday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here and again, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Be sure to make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Football. Fantasy's coming up. I'm really pumped about it. We're going to do some Locked On Ravens fantasy leagues this year. And again, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, audio form, video form, the whole 9 yards. Let's get into some news and notes, though, from just around the Ravens right now. Ravens will face off against the Cowboys tomorrow. Again, really exciting. Looking for some better quarterback play for sure, right? Obviously, I think for Cooper Rush, could be a Cooper Rush revenge game, all right? So his old team, he talked about kind of how it's going to be a little different on the other sideline going back to Dallas where he spent a good chunk of time of his life. So that'll be hopefully a better game for him. Plus, obviously, Devin Leary needs to show something here, or else it could get very dicey for him very quickly in terms of a potential roster or even a practice squad spot at that point. I think the running back position, it kind of is what it is right now. It's going to be probably a heavy workload for Myles Gaskin, D'Ernest Johnson. They cut Marcus Major, who was dealing with concussion, so that's unfortunate. But, we don't need to see Derrick Henry, don't need to see Justice Hill, don't need to see Keaton Mitchell anymore either. So you're hoping that you can, get some production. It's just guys eating carries and hopefully making a push for potentially a practice squad spot. But Rasheen Ali, I think, is going to be the main guy to watch here, where he'll probably get the start and will probably work alongside the ones. So he's a guy that's fighting for a roster spot legitimately. The other two guys probably fighting for practice squad spots. Really intrigued by the wide receivers too. Obviously, we didn't really get to see a lot of them in week one because the quarterbacks could not get the ball to them. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot that you hope to see from guys like Dayton Wade, Anthony Miller, obviously LeJounte, hopefully Tez Walker. I want to see a lot from Tez. So those guys are hopefully going to get more opportunities in this game. You know, the tight end position, not really a ton to write home about there. Offensive line wise, you know, all eyes are going to be on number 77. All eyes are going to be on Daniel Falele. It's going to be who it is. So him and Voorhees, Rosengarten might get some more time. We know that John Harbaugh said that the starters that didn't play in week one here of the preseason will not play in week two. So Rosengarten did play a little bit. So maybe we'll see him in action a little bit as well. Really excited to see how guys like Mike Green, Aeneas Peebles, CJ Okoye, Adisa Isaac, David Ajabo, how guys on that front can respond from a really solid showing in week one. Guys who are fighting for roster spots like Ajabo, others who are maybe fighting for early season roles. Can Mike Green push himself into a bigger week one role? We'll see. A lot of guys ahead of him right now, but he's looked really good. He's been dominating training camp, so hopefully he'll be able to get out there. And then linebacker wise, we'd like to see a little more Trenton Simpson, Teddy Buchanan in this game in a positive way. Hopefully that will be able to come to fruition. And then corner wise, you know, with Bilal Kone and Robert Longer being out for the season, it's another opportunity for Lamar Davis to secure his roster spot, which I think is probably already secure. But Ruben Lowry is going to be a guy that I'm going to be looking out for a ton in this game. Bo Braids and UC Kane, and then obviously Tyler Loop and Jordan Stout, that special teams unit, gonna be intriguing to me. So a lot of storylines. We'll get into those a little bit more also in tomorrow's bonus episode before the game. But in terms of other stuff going on around the Ravens right now, just to round out the show here, Tavon Austin, who obviously Baltimore legend, West Virginia college football legend, and then played for a while in the NFL. He was asked about LeJounte Wester by Alex Glaze over at WJZ, and he said, quote, "I've been a fan of his. I love his energy level. Kind of reminds me of myself. It feels good to see how much he loves the game of football. He loves it. You know, says he's a fan of Dion, keeps up with Dion in Colorado, so he watched him a lot, and, you know, actually shared that he, you know, texted and messaged LeJounte and kind of given him advice. So it was, you know, really cool to kind of see that connection there between those two. We know LeJounte had a huge game, and I know it probably meant the world to LeJounte coming from a guy like Tavon, who, you know, didn't have the best NFL career by any stretch of the imagination, but in college football, I mean, he was one of the most electrifying players we've ever seen. And obviously from a Baltimore perspective, him being connected to the city makes it even more special that way. Also, but the Ravens also no longer are going to have joint practices here with the Commanders. The Ravens announced yesterday that they mutually, with the Commanders, decided to cancel that joint practice. They cited the strain on players heading into a short week and the team's previous games scheduled on different days. So I guess scheduling conflicts, and, you know, instead they're going to just concentrate on preparing for the upcoming preseason matchup. I'm not sure if that's going to have huge implications on how the Ravens approach maybe that final preseason game. Maybe we do get Lamar and the guys to play a snap or two, maybe one singular snap. I don't know, maybe a drive. But, you know, at the end of the day, those joint practices are opportunities for the starters to get in really good work against another team in a controlled environment. It's a decent loss, but I do understand that both teams want to be as safe as possible with the whole thing. So I guess that maybe it'll change a little bit of what they want to do in the preseason, but I also wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't. And it's just like, okay, they're not going to get that extra work in for a day, and it is what it is. So that I was a little shocked to hear about that, but that was news that came across the timeline on Thursday. And then also Rashee Rice is apparently going to be eligible to play in the Ravens week 4 preseason game with the Chiefs. Apparently that his hearing for a multi-car crash in Dallas is going to be heard on September 30th, which is 2 days after the Ravens and Chiefs play. Really weird situation. You know, the Chiefs have a stretch with Rashee Rice in the first 4 weeks of the season that include the Ravens, Eagles, the Chargers are their opening game. I mean, I don't really get this. Jordan Addison got suspended for 3 games, and, you know, they both had very similar timelines, I guess. I know Rice's thing happened last offseason, but in terms of just all the resolutions, I don't really understand what's going on here. Feels a little fishy, feels a little weird that, you would have a hearing like this in the middle of the season. But I don't know. I guess the Chiefs are getting a potential advantage there for that Ravens matchup. So this is what it is. You got to win the games. And if they meet in the postseason and the Chiefs are healthy, you're going to have to see Rashee Rice anyway. So maybe an opportunity to game plan against them, I guess, is a way I'll put that. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning into the show today. On the way out, again, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back with a bonus episode, and then we'll have the watch along during the game. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.